Star Wars is one of the most iconic and valuable franchises in entertainment history, a cultural phenomenon that has defined multiple generations and generated tens of billions of dollars across films, television, merchandise, and licensing. But despite this unprecedented success and cultural impact, numerous actors have walked away from Star Wars. Some at the natural end of their involvement, some due to creative differences and frustration with how their characters were handled, some because of toxic fan backlash, and some under circumstances that remain controversial and deeply troubling. Understanding who left Star Wars, why they left, and what their departures reveal about both the franchise's triumphs and its serious problems provides crucial insight into how even the biggest properties can lose their most valuable talent. Let's break down every major actor who quit or left Star Wars, examining their reasons, the circumstances of their departure, what it meant for their characters and the franchise, and what these exits reveal about the realities of being part of one of the world's most scrutinized and sometimes toxic fandoms. Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford's complicated relationship with Star Wars is legendary in Hollywood. Ford played Han Solo in the original trilogy, a role that made him a global superstar and defined his early career. But Ford has been open for decades about his ambivalence toward Star Wars and his desire to move beyond the franchise that made him famous. According to interviews and industry sources, Ford actively lobbied George Lucas to kill Han Solo in Return of the Jedi, 1983, arguing that the character had completed his arc and that a heroic death would give the story more emotional weight and dramatic stakes. Lucas refused, wanting to preserve the happy ending where the main heroes survive and triumph. For over 30 years, Ford maintained his distance from Star Wars, doing occasional promotional appearances, but making clear through his comments and choices that he considered himself done with the franchise. He built a successful career in other films, Indiana Jones, Blade Runner, The Fugitive, and many others, and seemed content to leave Han Solo in the past. Ford's return for The Force Awakens, 2015, was therefore shocking to many observers. According to sources close to the production, Ford agreed to return for two primary reasons. First, Disney offered him an enormous amount of money, reportedly in the range of $25 million, plus back-end participation. Second, and more importantly, Disney and director J.J. Abrams agreed that Han Solo would die in The Force Awakens, finally giving Ford the heroic death he'd wanted for decades. Ford's performance in The Force Awakens was genuinely engaged and emotional, suggesting he appreciated getting to complete Han's story on his terms. His death scene, killed by his son Ben Solo/Kylo Ren, was the film's emotional centerpiece and one of the most impactful moments in Star Wars history. Ford is definitively done with Star Wars, now that Han is dead. He's made clear in interviews that he has no interest in returning even for flashbacks or digital resurrection, that he's satisfied with how Han's story ended, and that he's moved on completely. His departure was planned, negotiated, and executed on his terms, making it one of the most successful Star Wars exits despite the complicated relationship that preceded it. Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill's departure from active Star Wars involvement is one of the most heartbreaking and controversial in the franchise's history. Hamill played Luke Skywalker in the original trilogy, becoming synonymous with the hero of Star Wars for millions of fans worldwide. His return for the sequel trilogy should have been triumphant, but instead it became a source of profound disappointment and frustration. Hamill has been remarkably candid about his problems with how Luke was handled in The Last Jedi, 2018. In interviews before and after the film's release, Hamill stated that he fundamentally disagreed with almost every choice director Rian Johnson made about Luke's character. The portrayal of Luke as a broken, defeated hermit who had abandoned his friends and contemplated murdering his nephew contradicted everything Hamill understood about the character he'd played for 40 years. According to sources and Hamill's own comments, he raised his concerns with Johnson and with Lucasfilm during production, arguing that Luke's characterization didn't make sense given who he was in the original trilogy and what his journey had been. But Johnson and Lucasfilm leadership insisted on their vision, asking Hamill to trust the process and the story they were telling. Hamill ultimately delivered the performance as written, creating a portrayal that was technically skilled, but that he clearly had deep reservations about. After the film's release and the divisive fan response, Hamill walked back some of his criticisms, saying he regretted speaking out against the creative choices and that he should have kept his concerns private. But the damage to Hamill's relationship with Disney's Star Wars was done. While Luke appeared briefly in The Rise of Skywalker, and Hamill has done some voice work and made promotional appearances, he's been noticeably less enthusiastic and engaged than he was before The Last Jedi. According to insiders, Hamill feels that his concerns were dismissed, that Luke's legacy was damaged in ways that can't be repaired, and that his decades of service as Star Wars' greatest ambassador earned him more respect than he received. Hamill hasn't formally quit Star Wars. He's too professional and too loyal to openly burn that bridge. But he's essentially done with active involvement beyond contractual obligations, and his reduced enthusiasm is noticeable to anyone who followed his passionate Star Wars advocacy before the sequel trilogy disappointed him. John Boyega. John Boyega's departure from Star Wars is one of the most damaging and controversial because it highlights serious problems with how Disney handled diverse characters in the sequel trilogy. Boyega played Finn, a former stormtrooper who defects and becomes a hero of the Resistance. Finn was prominently featured in The Force Awakens marketing and seemed positioned as a central protagonist alongside Rey and Poe. But over the course of the sequel trilogy, Finn's role was progressively diminished. The Force Awakens suggested he might be Force-sensitive and positioned him as a co-lead with Rey. The Last Jedi sidelined him into a subplot with new character Rose Tico that many fans felt was the film's weakest element. The Rise of Skywalker gave him even less to do, with his Force sensitivity barely explored and his character arc feeling incomplete. Boyega has been blunt about his frustration with how Finn was handled. In interviews after the sequel trilogy concluded, he stated that Disney and Lucasfilm marginalized characters of color while giving more development to other characters. He said he felt his character was wasted and that the promises made to him about Finn's importance weren't kept. According to sources, Boyega's frustration also stemmed from the racist harassment he received from some toxic fans who objected to a black stormtrooper, and from feeling that Lucasfilm didn't adequately defend him or push back against that toxicity. The combination of being sidelined creatively and being subjected to racist attacks without sufficient support from the studio made Boyega's Star Wars experience deeply negative. Boyega has been clear that he's done with Star Wars and wouldn't return for future projects. He said he has no interest in reprising Finn and that he's moved on to other work where he feels more valued and respected. His departure is particularly damaging because it validates criticisms that Disney talked about diversity but failed to actually develop and support diverse characters properly. Marie Tran. Marie Tran's departure from active Star Wars involvement is one of the franchise's most shameful episodes, highlighting the toxicity of segments of the fanbase and Lucasfilm's failure to protect actors from harassment. Tran played Rose Tico in The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, a new character who was positioned as an important addition to the Star Wars universe. But Rose became a lightning rod for fan criticism and outright harassment. Some fans disliked the character and blamed Tran for the weaknesses in The Last Jedi's writing, as if she controlled creative decisions rather than just performing the role she was given. The criticism escalated into racist and harassment, with Tran being attacked on social media with vile abuse that drove her to delete her Instagram account. According to sources and Tran's own writings, the harassment was devastating and traumatic. She experienced racist attacks, body shaming, and threats that made her question her place in Star Wars and in Hollywood generally. And critically, she felt that Lucasfilm didn't do enough to defend her or to push back forcefully against the toxicity. The Rise of Skywalker drastically reduced Rose's role, giving her only a few minutes of screen time despite being a prominent character in the previous film. Many observers interpreted this as Lucasfilm responding to toxic fan backlash by sidelining the character rather than standing behind Tran and the creative choices that introduced Rose. Tran has handled this situation with remarkable grace, writing thoughtfully about her experiences and focusing on moving forward rather than dwelling on the pain. But she's essentially done with Star Wars. She fulfilled her contractual obligations but has no apparent interest in returning to a franchise where she experienced such trauma and where she felt unsupported by the studio that hired her. Tran's departure is a black mark on Star Wars fandom and on Lucasfilm's treatment of diverse actors who face harassment. It shows the real human cost of toxic fan behavior and studio failure to protect talent from abuse. Oscar Isaac. Oscar Isaac's relationship with Star Wars ended with his clear relief at being done with the franchise. Isaac played Poe Dameron across the sequel trilogy, a character who evolved from cocky pilot in The Force Awakens to resistance leader in later films. But Isaac has been candid about his frustrations with how Poe developed and with the constraints of working in a massive franchise. In interviews, Isaac has discussed feeling that Poe's character arc was inconsistent and poorly developed across the trilogy, with personality and motivations changing between films in ways that didn't make sense. He's also talked about the challenges of working on massive productions where actors have limited creative input and where stories are being developed without clear long-term planning. Isaac has made clear that he's done with Star Wars and wouldn't return for future projects. He's pursuing other work, including more dramatic roles and projects where he has more creative freedom and influence. Unlike some actors who maintain diplomatic silence about franchises they've left, Isaac has been relatively open about not missing Star Wars and being happy to move on. His departure is less dramatic than some others, but still significant because Poe was positioned as one of the sequel trilogy's main heroes. Isaac's lack of interest in continuing speaks to how even actors in prominent roles can feel unfulfilled by the franchise experience if the creative work isn't satisfying. The pattern: what all these departures reveal about Star Wars. Looking across these various departures and exits, several patterns emerge that reveal deeper problems with how Star Wars has been managed and what it's like to be part of the franchise. First, creative disrespect and poor character development drive away even actors who love Star Wars. Hamill's frustration with Luke, Boyega's anger about Finn being sidelined, Isaac's disappointment with Poe's inconsistent characterization, these all stem from Lucasfilm failing to develop characters thoughtfully and failing to listen to actors' insights about the roles they play. Second, toxic fandom creates real trauma that Lucasfilm hasn't adequately addressed or protected actors from. Marie Tran's harassment was predictable and preventable, but Lucasfilm failed to defend her forcefully and then appeared to reduce her role in response to toxic fans. This sends a message that harassment works and that actors can't count on studio support when facing abuse. Third, the demands and constraints of massive franchise filmmaking can be creatively stifling even for actors in prominent roles. The lack of creative input, the uncertain long-term planning, the pressure to serve franchise needs over character development, all of this can make Star Wars less fulfilling than it appears from outside. The departures of actors from Star Wars tell a story about the challenges of managing massive franchises, the human cost of toxic fandom, the importance of respecting talent's creative insights, and the need for better planning and character development. Every actor who left had their own reasons, but collectively, their departures reveal systemic issues that diminish the franchise and make it harder to attract and retain top talent.